There's a particular kind of fear that doesn't come from pain itself, but from unfamiliarity. You look in the mirror and you recognize your face. You recognize your life. You recognize the responsibilities waiting for you, but your body feels like it belongs to someone else. Not dramatically, not as a breakdown you can point to, more like a quiet glitch in the relationship between you and the one place you're supposed to live. You used to know how to steer it. You used to know what food made you feel good, what sleep fixed you, what workout woke you up, what routine brought you back. You used to know how to push and recover, how to hold a schedule without paying for it for days, how to wake up and feel at least neutral in your own skin. And then something shifted. Now you're tired in a new way, sensitive in a new way, slower in a new way. Your nervous system feels more reactive. Your appetite feels different. Your sleep feels thinner. Your body feels like it has opinions you didn't authorize. You keep trying to treat it like the old body, and it keeps not responding, like it's refusing to cooperate with the version of you that still thinks you can go back. So you start asking the question that always turns into shame. What's wrong with me? But the real question is sharper. And if you let it land, it changes everything. What if nothing is wrong with you at all? What if you don't recognize your body because you're not in a health problem? You're in an identity phase, and your body is no longer willing to be managed by an identity that has already expired. If you're living in this, you know how lonely it can feel, because you can't always explain it without sounding dramatic, and you can't always measure it without becoming obsessive. You try to describe it to someone, and it comes out as fragments. I'm just not myself. I don't know why I can't bounce back. I don't understand why I feel so depleted. My body feels off. And people offer the usual answers because they want to help and because they don't know what else to say. Get more sleep. Drink more water. Take a supplement. Try a new routine. Just be consistent. And the worst part is that you've tried consistency. You've tried discipline. You've tried the things that used to work. You've tried being positive. You've tried not making it a big deal. But your body keeps giving you the same message, over and over, in the language of sensation. No, not like this. Not anymore. So you start blaming yourself for the no. You tell yourself you've lost your edge. You tell yourself you're getting weak. You tell yourself you're lazy, or fragile, or undisciplined, or too sensitive. You start watching other people do what you used to do, and you feel that sharp sting of comparison, like grief disguised as judgment. You might even start resenting your own body, because it feels like it changed the rules without asking you. But beneath the resentment is something softer and more frightening. It's the feeling that if you can't control your body the way you used to, you might have to change your life. And changing your life means losing the identity you built on being capable, on being reliable, on being the one who can handle it. So you keep trying to negotiate your way back into the old self, and every time the body doesn't comply, it feels like betrayal. What you may not realize is that the body isn't betraying you. It's telling you the old contract is over. Some transformations don't announce themselves as transformation. They arrive as inconvenience, as symptoms, as exhaustion, as intolerance, as a strange tightness in your chest when you try to live the same way you lived before. And the mind calls that failure, because the mind prefers a simple story. But the body is living a different truth. The body doesn't just carry your habits, it carries your identity. It carries the posture you adopted to survive. It carries the pace you use to earn love. It carries the way you learn to be useful, to be impressive, to be low maintenance, to be safe for other people. So when your identity begins to shift, your body often becomes the first place you feel the tension. Not because you're collapsing, but because you're crossing. This is where identity phases and self-concept shifts becomes a lens instead of a label. It names the space you're in when the old version of you can't fully return, and the new version of you hasn't fully stabilized. It explains why the body can feel unfamiliar during healing, recovery, hormonal change, grief, burnout, or any season that strips you down to what you can no longer pretend. Because a new self can't be built on an old body contract. And sometimes the only way your system can force you to stop reenacting the same life is to make that life feel physically incompatible. That's not punishment. That's protection with teeth. And once you see it, you stop asking, how do I get back? You start asking, what is my body refusing to carry forward? Identity phases aren't a modern trend. They're an ancient human reality that older cultures took seriously enough to ritualize. In many rites of passage traditions, a person wasn't expected to glide smoothly from one stage of life to the next. They were expected to become disoriented for a while. The old role would be stripped away. The person would enter a liminal space where they weren't who they were and weren't yet who they would be. And then they'd return changed. That liminal stretch was never treated as a personal flaw. It was treated as the passage itself. Developmental psychology later described similar thresholds with different language, mapping how identity consolidates and reorganizes through stages, how new responsibilities and losses force new self-concepts, how the psyche and nervous system adapt when an old framework can't hold reality anymore. Identity was never meant to be static. It was meant to evolve, even when the evolution felt like disorientation. What modern life does, unfortunately, is demand transformation without allowing transition. It expects you to change and remain perfectly functional. It expects you to heal and keep performing. It expects you to adapt and still look the same, move the same, produce the same. It treats the in-between as weakness. But your body does not. Your body treats the in-between as labor, because identity phases require biological adjustment, not just mental acceptance. The nervous system has to learn new safety rules. The endocrine system has to renegotiate rhythm. The immune system has to recalibrate after chronic stress. The body has to remap what effort costs now, what rest actually restores now, what foods stabilize now, what relationships drain now, what environments dysregulate now. That's why you don't recognize yourself. Not because you're lost, but because the old self was built for a season that's no longer here. And you can see this in real life, in ways people rarely name as identity. You see it in postpartum bodies, not only in the physical recovery, but in the shock of living in a new nervous system. It's not just sleep deprivation. It's the way the body becomes more protective, more sensitive, sometimes more anxious, sometimes more numb, because it's reorganizing around responsibility, vigilance, and a new kind of love. People expect the body to bounce back, but the deeper truth is that the person can't bounce back into who they were. They have to grow forward into who they are now. You see it in burnout recovery, when the most disorienting part isn't the exhaustion, it's the identity loss. The person who used to be driven can't access drive. The person who used to be resilient can't tolerate stress. The person who used to be social wants solitude. They think they're becoming worse, when their body is actually refusing to rebuild the same survival identity. It's saying, I will not be powered by adrenaline anymore. I will not be maintained by fear anymore. Learn a new way. You see it in chronic illness or autoimmune flares, where the grief isn't only symptoms, it's the loss of the old reliability. The person who could push through learns that pushing through has consequences now. Their body becomes a teacher with boundaries, and the lesson is brutal at first because it feels like losing freedom. But over time, many people discover it's not a loss of life, it's a loss of illusion. The illusion that the body is a machine you can override forever. You see it in perimenopause and midlife hormonal shifts too, when the body's rhythms change, tolerances change, sleep changes, weight changes, and people feel betrayed because they keep trying to use old rules. But this is often an identity phase dressed up as a health complaint. It's the body asking for a different pace, different nourishment, different stress relationship, different self-respect. Identity phases and self-concept. Shifts explains why these moments feel so intense, because they're not only asking you to heal, they're asking you to release the identity that was attached to your old functioning. And that release can feel like grief, because it is grief, even if the old identity was costing you. So what do you do when you're in the middle of it, when your body feels unfamiliar, and your mind keeps trying to drag you back to the old standards? You start with a quieter kind of honesty. Instead of asking how to force your body to perform, you ask what your body is protecting. When your energy drops, assume there is wisdom in the drop. When your tolerance shrinks, assume there is information in the shrinking. When your nervous system flares, assume there is an old demand being exposed. Then you stop using the old identity as the measuring stick. If you keep comparing today's body to the body you had before the threshold, you'll interpret adaptation as failure. But if you compare today's body to yesterday's self-abandonment, you'll start seeing progress where you used to see loss. Progress might look like leaving earlier, saying no sooner, sleeping before you crash, eating before you spiral, resting before you deserve it, listening before your body has to scream. You also begin building trust through small agreements you can actually keep. Identity phases don't respond well to grand resets, because grand resets are often the old identity trying to regain control. Your body trusts consistency, not intensity. A steady sleep window, a gentler approach to movement, a realistic workload, meals that stabilize instead of punish, fewer stimulants that imitate energy, more moments of quiet that teach your nervous system it isn't being chased, and you let grief have a seat without letting it take the wheel. Sometimes you need to mourn the old capacity the old ease, the old certainty. Not because you'll never feel good again, but because denying grief keeps you trapped in comparison. Grief makes room for a new relationship with your body, one that isn't based on pretending nothing changed. Finally, you choose one act of self-respect that signals the new identity. Not a performance for anyone else, but a private alignment. You stop explaining your fatigue like it's a crime. You stop apologizing for boundaries that protect your health. You stop negotiating with people who treat your body's needs as inconvenience. You stop calling yourself lazy when what you really are is in transition. Because identity phases require one thing more than anything else: permission. Permission to be in between. Permission to be learning. Permission to become someone whose health is not built on self-override. And when you move this way, something begins to change that's hard to describe until you feel it. Before, you lived inside a quiet war. You were always trying to get back, always trying to prove you were still the old you, always trying to earn the right to rest, always negotiating with symptoms like they were enemies. Your body felt like a problem to solve, and the more you fought it, the more it tightened, the more it resisted, the more it demanded consequences just to be heard. After the war quiets, you start feeling calm return in small pockets. Not because life gets perfect, but because you stop treating your body like a machine you should punish into compliance. You feel trust rebuild because you keep agreements with yourself instead of abandoning yourself for the old image. You feel clarity sharpen because you're no longer listening through panic and comparison. You feel self-respect deepen because you stop measuring your worth by how much your body can tolerate. And that's the real transformation. Not that you become who you were, that you become someone who doesn't need to be who you were to be whole. Internal change comes first. The outside catches up later. Your body starts feeling less like a stranger, not because it went back, but because you finally met it where it is. If you're honest, where have you been trying to force your body to act like an older version of you? And what is one sign your system keeps repeating that says you're in an identity phase, inviting you to release an old health contract and build a new one with self-respect? Your body isn't confusing you to punish you. It's becoming unfamiliar so you'll stop living from an expired identity. Because the life you're entering cannot be sustained by the self you were trained to be. If this episode gave language to what you've been living, share in the comments what old health identity you feel yourself outgrowing and what your body is asking for instead. Subscribe if you want more Prophecy Pulse episodes that decode these transitions with grounded clarity, so you can move forward without trying to resurrect who you were.